I didn't realize that I got tan so much yesterday, so we're just gonna roll with that, but welcome, hi. If you're new here, my name is Kailin and I post new videos every single week, and I post videos mainly about eating disorder recovery and intuitive eating, so if that's something that you're interested in, I would love for you to click onto that subscribe button down below and become part of our little family. But today we are going to be talking about a big topic, and I don't really know how I feel right now about filming this video because I'm going to be talking about my relationship with movement. And I also asked you over on my YouTube community page as well as over on Instagram if you had some questions about your own journey with movement, about recovery with movement, about my relationship with exercise, all of that fun stuff. So a big portion of this video will be me answering those questions. But before we do jump into those questions, I thought we would just do a little bit of a rundown about my relationship with movement, what it looked like while I was in recovery, and that whole shebang. So without further ado, let's get started. So when I was young, I absolutely loved gym class. I loved all forms of movement. I was a fairly active child. I loved playing soccer during the summer and basically just goofing around either with my friends or with my siblings. I just really liked to be in movement or in motion, I guess we could say. And I always loved sports, primarily team sports. I really just loved how they made me feel, whether it was the sense of community that I got from them or just in general, that sort of serotonin, adrenaline, all of those little happy hormones. It just made me really happy. I never, ever was fixated on what I looked like, especially as a child. I was just participating in these activities and having fun. But unfortunately, earlier on, my eating disorder started when I was around 9 years old or so. And so it was around that time that I really started paying attention to my body, primarily just how my body looked. I hadn't exactly connected exercise and food and body or anything like that. I was just uncomfortable sometimes in certain areas because of things that people would say. I was not innately born hating my body. Nobody is. People made me feel a little bit less than, but I would say most of my criticism when it came to my body, especially at this age in particular, was just from me. It wasn't really from anybody else at this point in time. I was never severely bullied. I would get some backhanded compliments from some close family members. And there was also a lot of significant comparison between my sister and myself. My sister is 18 months older than me, but we also have very different builds. She's taller than me, she's slimmer than me, and I was a little bit on the shorter side, even though there's not too much of a height difference between us. I was curvier, I was more muscular, I was bulkier, and so part of me just had this comparison in my head constantly going, especially when it came to the words that people would use to like describe my sister's body versus my body. And it was just something that I was starting to pay attention to at this age. And just talking about it makes me a little bit emotional because I was only 8 and I really didn't like myself even then. And I didn't think I was going to tear up in this video at all, but here I am. I'm a crier. But at some point in my life, I would say it was at the beginning of high school. So when I was around 11 or 12 years old, I think that's when we start high school, movement turned into something very different. I started doing sit-ups in the middle of the night, just hoping that the next day I would wake up and have a flatter stomach. I started going to this running track that was near my house that I grew up in, and I would just run. And I hated running. It gave me shin splints. It was very painful. But I kind of fell into this mentality that I must do this. I must work out or be small in order to be loved. I must try to shrink myself because that means I will be happier. I fell into all of those false promises, and gradually it really ruined my relationship with movement. And this relationship that I had with movement was so special in my life, and it felt very much like me, or at least a part of me that I didn't want to alter or change, and it just turned into something that I had very little control over. And over this period of time, I started to find less joy in the sports that I would play. I quit soccer, I think when I was in 7th or 8th grade. And at the time, I said it was because I couldn't do soccer and volleyball at the same time, which I think had some semblance of truth in it. In my high school, volleyball was taken very, very seriously, and we had practices multiple times per week, and you couldn't really be invested in another sport. So nobody really thought twice when I said that I was quitting soccer. But the reason that I quit soccer in 7th grade, I don't think I've actually ever admitted this to anybody, but here I am admitting it to thousands of friends online, is I didn't like the way that the uniform made me look. Yeah, I stopped doing something that I really liked and really enjoyed and got a lot out of because I thought that I looked fat in the uniform. And from the lens that I have right now, I'm not punishing my younger self for thinking that way. I'm not mad at her for thinking that way, even though those thoughts are laced so heavily with fat phobia. I feel so much compassion towards her because she was taught from the age of 12 that being fat or taking up space was so wrong. And that was so drilled in my head that I walked away from a sport that I really liked. I'm really happy that I continued to play volleyball, even though I didn't feel great most practices because I was under-fueling myself, under-eating. And I started off as a really good player, I would say. I was captain of the team. I had really good sportsmanship and really good attitude. But by the time it was my last year in high school, the year I was graduating, my eating disorder was probably at its height, and nobody really noticed. And I think that that's what gets me the most. And of course, it's nobody's fault. I don't even know that I had a problem, but I would skip meals or not eat when the rest of my team was eating on the road. And I just wish that somebody would have said something to me because it definitely got worse the more I kept going. I really didn't think that this was going to be an emotional video. I think I'm touching on something that I just haven't spoken about in a long time. I ended up in grade 11, which is graduating year in Canada. Graduating year here in Quebec. I didn't have the energy to be the player that I wanted to be anymore. And so my performance on the court, it really went downhill, and so did my attitude. I feel like I was irritable and angry, not at the other players on the team, but at my coaches, at myself. And that frustration, especially on a volleyball court, can only go so far. You will hit the ball out of bounds, you won't have a lot of control, and when you aren't there mentally because you aren't eating enough and you are over-exercising and all of these things, you cannot be quick. And being quick and thinking strategically and thinking about where the ball could potentially fall or looking at the body language of other players in volleyball is extremely important. And I just slipped through the cracks in that last year and things didn't go well, basically. I wish I could go back in time and sort of shake myself or help myself into it and really make my senior year super enjoyable. And I know that this video is primarily about movement and my relationship with movement and where I am today, but I definitely sometimes think of how much more fun I could have had if I never cared about what I looked like, or if I never cared about the things that I ate, if I never downloaded MyFitnessPal, if I never started weighing my food, how different my life could have potentially been. And of course, my whole journey, I can't go back and change anything. It's led me to be here today to share this platform with all of you, but it still is a very painful experience for me to sometimes think about, of, you know, going to prom and not even eating the dessert because, again, I was so preoccupied with my weight. Of also accepting the first prom dress that I put on. That's the one that I ended up buying because I didn't want to have to look at my body in the mirror over and over again to choose a dress. So I found the first one that fit and I just kept it. And so anyway, I feel like this is just me dumping on all of you. But basically, my relationship with movement was tattered, especially when I started CEGEP. I tried out for the volleyball team and I got on the team, and then I ended up quitting halfway through because my body couldn't take it. And then the next year when I tried out for the team again, I didn't make it, which was also a huge blow. And at this point in time, it was when I found the gym. And it was also when I sort of transitioned from anorexia and binge eating to my third and final eating disorder, which was orthorexia. And for those of you who don't know what orthorexia is, it's basically this obsession with clean eating, with healthy eating, as well as maintaining just like a healthy lifestyle. I hate how diet culture has ruined all of those words for me, but here we are today. Also, my nose is so red from me crying. It's kind of cute. It's kind of cute, you know? I was very depressed when I started at the gym. I was very insecure, and the more weight I lost during that period of my life, the more validation that I got from others. Therefore, I made that association again that if I am smaller, people will find me more attractive, people will find me more beautiful, people will just want to be around me more. And even though I felt that way, my thoughts were not facts. And the important fact of the matter is that people love me for me and not for what my body looks like. And now I have that sort of perspective. But back then, I definitely didn't. And at that point in time, I also started a fitness Instagram account, and it blew up. I think it got up to around 80,000 followers. People were so supportive, but they didn't really know what they were supporting, which is why I'm so against people commenting on like people's weight loss or people's transformations. We just never know what's going on behind the surface, even if somebody is pretending that everything is okay. Even if somebody is gratefully accepting those compliments. I was that person. I was that person who would scroll through my hundreds of comments and just ride that wave of pride and feel so happy. But as soon as a post didn't do well, as soon as the scale went up a little bit, as soon as I was not in a controlled environment, I lost it. And I lost all sense of who I was. And the gym became something that I had to do versus something that I actually wanted to do. So that transition also really happened. And so where am I today? Because I do not go to the gym, not anymore. I was in active eating disorder recovery away from the gym for around 3 years. I feel like my mind, especially with COVID, the years are a mess. I can't even name what year is what. And going back and looking at photos is just a pretty triggering experience for me. So we're not gonna do that. But things have changed, and now I do find joy from movement, from different sorts of movements. Let's jump into some of the questions that you asked me, again, about my own recovery, about movement, all of those fun things. So the first question is, what was your favorite type of movement in recovery? And my answer for you is a little bit complicated because I went through different recovery processes because I am somebody who suffered from 3 different eating disorders. I had 3 different sort of treatment plans. Some were sort of on my own independently, and others I did outpatient programs. But when I did come to really fixing my relationship with movement and biting my orthorexia in the ass, I didn't do movement. Not throughout my recovery. I would go on like a leisurely walk with friends or with my dogs or dog at the time. Tabasco wasn't really around. And that was it. I did no other form of conventional movement, no team sports, nothing like that at all. And that was the absolute healthiest thing that I could do for myself in the moment, because it took me, I would say, around 2 years to really separate the idea of like movement being something that I had to do versus movement being something that should be fun and enjoyable and a celebration of what you can do. It took me 2 years to actually convince myself that that thought was true. And that sort of break from exercise, which I do think most people should do in recovery from an eating disorder, if you have a background with compulsive exercise. If you have a background like that, I don't think that it makes sense to continue to have that in your life while you were trying to fix what's going on up here. It just seems a little bit counterintuitive to me. And I strongly and firmly believe that if I were to try to continue my routine when it came to movement and exercise while I was trying to recover, that I would not be recovered today. That break was absolutely the best thing that I ever decided to do. All right, so I'm going to read this next question from this next individual, and then we're going to talk a little bit about it. So the question is, if movement is needed to be healthy, in quotations from many sources, why do people who are recovering from things other than anorexia stop doing it? Genuine question, please don't come for me. I think the confusing thing to me about this particular question is the isolation of anorexia. And by saying that people who have anorexia definitely shouldn't move, but people who don't have anorexia should, I think is missing the complete part of why movement is important for us. Movement is important, of course, for cardiovascular health, all of those kinds of things, just to have the ability to move your body in a way that feels good for you, but that's also gonna look different for everybody else. Whether you are in a disabled body, that is going to look very different, right? We don't wanna have an ableist view on this, which it sounds from the question that we might. But something else that we need in order to be healthy is a healthy mind. And every single eating disorder, anorexia included, does not have a healthy mind. And so if we want to focus on the health of individuals, we have to focus from the mind first. Because if you have an unhealthy mindset, or if you are struggling with mental illness, then there's no way that other forms of health can be your main priority at that point in time. And in order to be able to find a form of movement that you love and that brings you joy and that makes you feel good, you have to be able to do it without being obsessed, without feeling like the world is crumbling around you when you don't participate in this movement. And so in order for me to go on hikes with my friends, in order for me to be active with my dogs and really enjoy my time together with them, I had to take those 2 years off. And the thing with recovery is we are focusing on what is best for us long term, when our eating disorder tends to be focused on what's best for us short term. And so when your workouts are bringing you more pain, more guilt, more shame, or skipping a workout is bringing up any of those feelings that I just mentioned, then it is no longer healthy. Just because something might inherently be good for us does not mean that in every single situation it is good for us. What happens if I break my leg? If I break my leg, should I go out on walks every single day because walks are good for you? No, I shouldn't, because I am recovering, because I am rehabilitating. It's the same thing for any sort of mental injury. And I know that I might sound a little bit feisty in my answer to this question, or not as kind maybe as I typically am. One of the reasons for that is because when I was recovering, one of the hardest things for me to deal with, which was another question, were comments like this of movement is healthy, you should be doing it. There are no absolutes in life. You don't have to do anything. And the thing is that comments like this just induce guilt. What other people do with their body, whether they move or choose not to, is none of your business. But people tend to make it their business a lot of the time. And so not only do you potentially have guilt and shame that you internalize yourself, but then you also have these external people making you feel bad for the decisions that you do. And I just had to remind myself in the moment that if anybody is trying to make me feel guilty for resting, for taking a break, for working on my mental health, then that is something that they need to go to therapy for, that they have to work through themselves. Of course, I want everybody to be confident and healthy and happy, but nobody owes you health, ever. But because of that decision that I made around 4 years ago now, again, my brain is a little bit lost in the facts here. But because of that decision that I made, now I am able to do the things that I love. And many people asked what my favorite form of movement is right now, and that really changes on a day-to-day basis because I do not regiment myself or make myself do certain things every day, because that is not a path that I can even remotely start to go on, nor do I want to. But some of the things that I really do love to do is circuit training or strength training. That's probably my favorite thing to do. I love going on walks with the dogs. I love having little independent dance parties by myself. That is so fun. I really like to go hiking. I also really like to do some slower, like stretching yoga or just stretching in general. Stretching feels so good. And I have some tight hips, so sometimes I just wanna, stretch them out. But the most important thing for me is that there's nothing that I feel like I should do, nothing I feel like I need to do, and I truly just listen to what sounds best to me, and that changes day to day, week to week, year to year. So the next question, which I think is a really important one to address, is how to see movement as joyful instead of as a form of punishment. My love, I feel for you so deeply, and I've been where you've been, so let me talk about some of my tips. First things first, you have to ask yourself why you want to move in the first place. That has to be a key for joyful movement. Do you want to celebrate your body? Are you feeling a little bit stiff and you just want to stretch it out? Or do you have a lot of energy and you just want to get some of that pent up energy out? What is your reason for moving? If it's because you feel like you should, if it's because it's something that you feel like you must do, if it's because of a comment that somebody made to you, if it's because you ate too much the day before or the week before, those are not good reasons. And you are going to fall down a very deep, dark rabbit hole if you continue to use those as your sort of fuel in order to go work out in the first place. So that's the first tip, is ask yourself why we want to do it. And the next thing is to actually do something that's fun. And if you don't know what's fun for you yet, that's okay. You have time. You have time to figure it out. I often like to think back to the things that you love doing as like a kid. If you like tag, then maybe you will like running. If you liked team sports, then joining a team sport could be very fun. If you like dance, then maybe there's a studio near you. It's never too late to also try new things. But the thing is that the movement that you liked before might not be able to serve you now, and that's okay. Again, I used to love going to the gym. I used to really like that environment. But right now, with the headspace that I'm in, it's not really an environment that I want to go back to. Probably because it brings up a lot of triggering memories for me and everything like that. That doesn't mean that I'll never set foot in a gym ever again, but it means that I found something that I'm a lot more comfortable with, which is working out at home for right now. And that's good for me, and it makes me feel really happy. I like that there's not mirrors everywhere. I like that I'm not thinking about people potentially looking or perceiving me a certain way. And again, it's not that I would automatically think those things if I were to go into a gym. I could probably go in and be fine, but what I'm doing is just considered relapse prevention so that I feel safe and comfy in everything that I do. The next tip that I'm going to give you is to listen to your body and not your mind. Okay, if you are there and you're doing some push-ups and you're feeling strong, great, let's see if we can do some more. But if we're doing some push-ups and we're feeling shaky and we're feeling headachy, and we're feeling weak, don't you let your mind tell you to do 5 more. That is not how it works. Okay, you have to be listening to your body and the signs that it gives you and not your mind. It doesn't matter if you told yourself you're gonna work out tomorrow. If you wake up the next day and you've got a really bad headache, or you didn't sleep that well, or your body hurts a little bit, you can't let your mind make that decision of, well, we already said we're gonna work out, so we might as well. That decision has to come from your body, not your mind. Another tip that I'm going to give you is to give yourself permission to walk away. And I did this a lot at the beginning when I first started to reintroduce joyful movement into my life. I would start a workout, realize it wasn't serving me, and I'd walk away. My sort of rule of thumb is to try something for 5 minutes, and if you don't enjoy it, and if you don't like it at all, you don't have to do it anymore. Nobody is forcing you to stay there except yourself. Even if you do go to a class and you realize in the middle of the class, maybe the instructor is saying some things that are triggering, maybe you're just not enjoying the class at all, maybe you're just so in your head, give yourself permission to leave. It is not rude to protect your inner peace. Another reminder when we are trying to move away from like this punishing movement to a form of movement that we feel really comfortable with is to remind yourself that there's no right way to be active. Just because somebody goes running doesn't mean that you have to go running. Just because somebody likes lifting weights doesn't mean that you have to lift weights. Movement can look totally unconventional and totally conventional depending on the person, but the only person that gets to decide what movement is best for you is you. Some people only walk, and that is great, and they don't have to change anything. And some people like to take it really slow and work on their flexibility and work on their stretching and all of the beautiful things like that. But running is not better than stretching, and stretching is not better than dancing, and dancing is not better than soccer, etc., etc. All forms of movement are okay, and your preferences are also going to change over time. Right now, I'm loving strength. It brings me so much joy, but maybe in a couple of months, I'll realize that I'm not getting that same joy that I used to, and I will switch to something else. Strength will always be there again if I decide to pick it up again one day, or if it's calling my name. But other than that, I have full permission to do what I want because it's my life, and it's your life too. Something that I also like to do, some people might find this a little bit cheesy, but I don't really care, is to thank my body throughout the movement itself. When a movement is, for example, a little bit harder for me, or the video that I'm doing, it just, it feels good and it's kicking my ass, I just thank myself. I thank my body for being able to do this movement because not everybody can. Not everybody has that ability. I thank my mind for being in a healthier mindset for me to be able to enjoy this in the first place. And I thank myself for prioritizing my recovery in order to have a more fulfilling life for myself. But this is about celebrating you. It's not about punishing yourself. So really what you say throughout this workout and how you encourage yourself goes a really long way. So for example, throughout the workout, if you're calling yourself stupid for example, failing an exercise or something, that would be something we would want to work on. So focus on what you say throughout the workouts and how you're encouraging yourself. And also focus on your thoughts before, during, and after your workouts. I know it's a lot of work, but in order to establish a healthy, good relationship with working out in the first place, you have to focus on these things. So if at the end of the workout, you're thinking, oh my God, that was such a bad workout, I didn't sweat, I suck, this is so horrible, tomorrow I'm gonna have to do 2 workouts. If those are any of your thoughts, then you're probably not engaging in joyful movement. So think of those 3 areas, what you're thinking before, during, and after. See if they're positive environments, and if they are, then we're probably on the right track. All right, so the next question, also a very popular one, is when can I start exercising again? And I would say if you're very eager to start exercise again, especially in your recovery, chances are you're eager for the wrong reasons. If you're feeling really eager to start and really excited to start, I would talk to your treatment team, talk to your doctor, talk to somebody that you trust, and just to sort of see if you are in the right mindset and utilize some of the tips that I mentioned beforehand in the previous question. And it is about trial and error. So if you realize that you're falling into any of your compulsive behaviors or habits, we have to have the honesty as well as the strength to be able to stop or to be able to step away. And until you actually have that strength, the likelihood of you being able to engage in joyful movement is slim or next to none. So if you are still working out through your recovery and you have a history of compulsive exercise, then you would probably want to evaluate your relationship with movement as it is right now. And the thing is that there's no right time. There's no right time. There is no 1 year or 6 months or 2 years. It's going to look different for every single individual, including myself. So with that information, it makes this question really, really hard to answer in the first place. So I think deep down you'll know. And I know, and I'm not trying to cop out of the question, but I honestly think that that's the answer, is that nobody can tell you when to be ready or when you are ready except you. And chances are you're gonna think you are ready before you are, just like I was. I tried and I realized, whoa, this is not for me. I am not ready yet. And I had that sort of strength to step away and take a second to evaluate all of the reasons why I need to wait longer. And so for now, I would ask yourself, I would be honest with yourself, and also see if your eating disorder, if it's still present at all, if it would benefit from your movement. And if it does benefit more than you would, it probably wouldn't be something that you're ready for. The next question is, how do you get back into movement during recovery? I definitely over-exercised during my ED, but now I've been in recovery for almost a full year and I hardly exercise at all. Like, I want to get back into it, but now it has such a negative connotation to me. If it has a really negative connotation to you, I guess one of my answers is why we feel inclined to start again. There is no right time. And so there's a chance that if you were totally turned off from it still to this day, that either we have to explore totally different forms of movement, but the more likely of the two is you're probably not ready for it, even if it's been a year. There's no time frame when it comes to healing. And finding your why is so important. And if it's something that you feel like you should do, then it's probably something that you shouldn't do. And also segueing into this next question of how do you make yourself feel like moving your body? I don't feel like moving my body at all. You can't force your body to feel certain things. And even within this own question, you said that you don't feel like moving your body at all. It's probably because it's not time for you to move it just yet. You're probably still in the process of recovery, or you are probably still in the process of putting all of those pieces back together. If anything, you should take this as a sign to slow down, focus on what your body does need or is asking for in these moments. And maybe it's rest, maybe it's a hobby, maybe it's for you to be more gentle with it, etc. There's so many things that our body tends to need. And so if our body is not requesting movement in any shape or form, there's nothing wrong with you. That's okay. I would just focus on what your body is asking for you and focus on meeting those needs more than anything else. So this next question is a bit more personal from the subscriber standpoint, so let me introduce it right here. Can I ever eat healthy, in parentheses, most of the time, and exercise without having an eating disorder? So, of course, people can eat foods that we would call power foods or whatever it might be and move in a way that feels good for them, and of course not suffer from an eating disorder. And I think the reason for that is that diet culture does not own movement. Diet culture does not own green juices or salads. Diet culture does not own shit unless you give it power, unless you moralize food. But from the way that you phrase this question, and by still using words as, you know, healthy or unhealthy, I think it still goes to show that we have a lot of mental work to do when it comes to how we view food, how we view health in general. Because health is not just about the food we eat and the way we move, it is so much more than that. And from my own personal belief, I think that people who have a history with compulsive exercise and compulsive movement will have to sort of navigate the world of movement in a totally different way. And the thing is if you're saying, I'm going to eat healthy most of the time or exercise most of the time, you're putting conditions on your body, on the way you view food, on the way you view movement, and that in of itself is not healthy, especially with this kind of background. So if you have rules like you should do something, or that you have to eat healthy most of the time, or even are still using those qualifiers to talk about food of I ate healthy today versus I ate unhealthy today, or anything like that, chances are we are not ready to engage with movement, because chances are we are still engaging with those negative eating disorder thoughts and behaviors, and even the eating disorder rhetoric. And to a certain extent, we might be trading one eating disorder for another, because it borders the line of orthorexia when we are obsessed with this idea of healthful living. And of course, I'm not saying that this beautiful friend is thinking this way. It's sort of just some food for thought given the way that the question was phrased. And of course, I'm never asking anybody to defend any of their questions or explain themselves, because you don't have to. But what I want to say about this kind of question, or just this idea in general of can I meet somewhere in the middle or whatever it might be, is that you can't negotiate with an eating disorder ever. You're not going to find middle ground, because that voice does not want a middle ground. It wants an all or nothing. And its goal is not to help you or protect you by any means. The goal of the eating disorder is to destroy you to a certain extent. And so we don't want to be negotiating with this kind of voice in the first place. And so ask yourself, right, am I trying to negotiate? Am I trying to meet in the middle? And we might have an answer that will help guide us a little bit further. Somebody asked if the gym is toxic, should you work out at all? And the question is absolutely not. Heck no. If the gym is toxic for you, don't go. Don't go. Please, for the love of God, don't go. And the gym is something that we might totally boycott completely, and that's also okay. We move in so many ways that we don't even realize on a day-to-day basis, and we don't actively have to pursue movement in order to be healthy or in order for our bodies to feel good. That's not how it works. And so for some individuals, if adding in movement alters your mental state and how you feel mentally, then it is not worth it for the added sort of mental benefit that movement could potentially bring. Not if it's harming us in the process. So if anything, I would take this as a sign that we are not ready to engage, and perhaps we never will be with the gym, and that's okay. We can do other fun things. We can go on little walks with our friends, get some ice cream, go on walk with pup, go on some fun like scenic hikes and watch the sunset. There's so much we can do, but we don't have to do something every day. That's just not how life works. All right, I feel like I've been talking a lot in this video, so we're going to be doing 2 more questions, and then we're gonna wrap it up in a nice, tight bow. The first question is, can I wear a fitness tracker in a safe way? And I am somebody who is wearing a Fitbit, so let's talk a little bit about it. I know that this watch can throw some people off sometimes because I'm somebody who says, don't focus on the numbers, don't count your steps, don't look at that calorie stuff, all of it. And I truly stand behind it. The main reason I personally wear this watch is because I am an insomniac and I have a lot of trouble with sleeping. And so this is something that actually helps me gauge how much sleep I am actually getting, because sometimes, and I think many insomniacs can relate, is you don't truly know how much sleep you get and you can feel totally fine the next day because my body is so used to running on little sleep. But this watch is actually, it'll actually be able to tell me if I've gotten 4 hours of sleep or 6 hours of sleep. Usually what I'm getting is like 5 to 6 hours, and I'm really trying to bump that up. So that's the reason why I wear mine. So what ties into this question, or I think the biggest question you have to ask yourself, is how do you feel when you don't wear the watch? So when I'm not wearing this, I feel fine. I don't feel anxious. I don't feel guilty. I don't feel like it's something that I should be wearing or should have on my hand. I feel good. If you can't take off your fitness tracker without feeling some kind of anxiety of any kind, then it is not healthy for you to be wearing it. I think the most important thing is just to ask yourself why you wear it or want to wear it in the first place. Are you wearing it just so you can have like alarms on throughout the day? Maybe because you are on like shift work or schedules or whatever it might be and it's easier, or you can get your texts on your watch, right? That might be a really good reason to wear one. And of course you can ask for like the steps to not be on the main screen so that we don't even engage. So really finding your why is so important. But if you want to get it to track your workouts, or if you want to get it to count your steps, my answer is just why. Why do you need a watch to tell you if you've had a good workout? Why do you need a watch to tell you if you've enjoyed your neighborhood walk with your, I don't know, neighbor or family or friends? My main advice is that yes, you can wear the watch safely, like myself, for example, and be okay, like many other people, and be okay. But as soon as you start fixating on numbers and steps and calorie counts and everything like that, it no longer becomes any kind of helpful tool. So if your reason for wearing a watch like this is to track your workouts, I'd probably recommend against it, because I don't really think that there's a point in that at all. And the last question that I'm going to talk about today is, what should I avoid if I'm trying to fix my relationship with movement? I don't want to make this list too extensive, so I'm going to try to think of some of my main points that I really want to get across. And the first thing is, please don't do any timed workouts. And what I mean by this is giving yourself time frames, which I think I referenced earlier in this video, but saying, I'm gonna go on a walk for 40 minutes. I'm gonna go work out for an hour, whatever it might be. When you give yourself parameters like that, you give your eating disorder voice so much opportunity to say that you failed, to tell you to go against your body and keep going because you said you were going to work out for an hour, for 40 minutes, whatever it might be. It's just not a helpful tool. It's not intuitive. It's not mindful. And this kind of thought pattern around working out really falls under like this umbrella of rules. So I really also want you to focus on not having any rules for any of your forms of movement, other than rules that would potentially serve you in your recovery. Even though we just spoke about the fitness watch, if you are just starting off, not something that you should wear during your workouts. In fact, I take mine off for many of my workouts so that I'm never tempted to look at the numbers after or anything like that. I primarily wear it to sleep. Something else that I would avoid, especially when we are re-entering movement for the first time, is to avoid triggering movement that you used to participate in the past. Explore elsewhere, try new forms of movement, really have a lot of variety just to see what you like. And I think that that will be something that would be pure gold for you. Something else that I would advise you to do instead of avoiding is to check in with your body, check in with yourself, how you are feeling. Ask yourself those questions of, why am I doing this? Does it feel good? All of that good stuff. Something else that I would recommend is for your frequency to be quite moderate. You should not be working out every day or every second day or anything like that. Joyful movement is a journey, so please don't rush it. Something else that we really want to do is wear something that's comfortable and something that fits. If you are uncomfortable at all in what you're wearing, maybe you're not ready to wear just a sports bra and leggings, for example, and that makes us a bit uncomfortable. Ease into that and wear something that you're comfortable with, because the last thing that we want to do is sort of to be pulled from, our movement, especially when it is something that's meant to bring us joy. If we're thinking about our body, or if our leggings are too tight, And if we're thinking about that the whole time, it's probably gonna bring you a lot of distress. And the last thing that I'm gonna say, I actually wrote in my notes, because I wrote some notes before filming this video, and I wrote, scale, never demon. So I think most of you can make out what I mean, but if you are starting a journey with joyful movement, if you are recovering in general, if you want to have a good relationship with your body, throw out the damn scale. Throw it the fuck out, okay? Okay. I love every single one of you. I'm feeling a lot better after this video. I feel like I had a lot to say, a lot to get off my chest. As you saw, it was a little bit emotional at the beginning, but I feel like it's kind of in a full circle. So I let it out. I vented to you, and then I feel like I also provided some potentially valuable information depending on who you ask, but I'm a bit biased for that. But I really hope that you liked this style of video where I give you a little bit of my own background, why this is important for me to talk about, and then also segueing into all of those questions. I'm not sure if I was organized at all in this video. I'm not sure if it's gonna make sense, but I know that it might be important to at least one of you out there. And as always, if you have any video topics that you would like me to cover, anything at all, then please feel free to leave all of your suggestions down below. And I really hope to see you in my next video. Make sure to do something kind for yourself today, okay? Okay, bye friends.